couch is so comfortable. I could get used to living here.
Look at this place. Everything here costs a fortune.
Did you hear that? What's that beeping?
No idea. Your brother never mentioned any security system. It's probably nothing. Maybe this turns it off.
Corin, it's not stopping. Are you sure we're okay?
Detected. Alarm activated. Police have been notified.
Corin, make it stop!
I'm trying. I don't know the code.
Come on, work.
We need to get out of here, now!
While I was at work, my Sil and her husband broke into my new house to move in their furniture, but I forgot to tell them I had signed up with ADT Home Security. So immediately a loud alarm went off, and after that, well, let's go. Pay me compensation. What you did hurt me so badly. As I listened to the piercing scream of my sister-in-law coming through the phone, something inside me finally snapped. Just moments ago, I was watching through the screen coldly as she and her family panicked while being surrounded by the police. The place, my newly built home, the castle that was supposed to be mine. You've got to be kidding me. I quietly ended the call and tapped my lawyer's number. My name is Marielle Knox, and I'm 36 years old. I work as a financial director at a major corporation in the city. Since my 20s, I have been steadily saving and investing, and at last, this spring, I finally obtained the brand new house I had always dreamed of. I lived there with my husband, Damon, but the property title was registered under my name. What I took the most pride in was my study, seamlessly integrated with a smart home system. In the inner terrace, connecting the indoors and outdoors, surrounded by high walls that completely blocked outside eyes. Even on rainy days, spending quiet hours there reading alone was the greatest comfort for me. This was supposed to be the fruit of my hard work, my perfect castle where no one could disturb me. But that peace was soon to be threatened. A string of burglaries began occurring in the neighborhood. Without hesitation, I signed a contract with CentraShield, a major security company. An alarm system plus 5 high-performance cameras monitoring inside and outside the house. With this, I thought invaders from outside would be completely shut out. That's what I believed. But there was one thing I had carelessly overlooked. I had forgotten to tell my family about the existence of this flawless security system, especially since I had given spare keys to my husband and his relatives just in case of emergency. I had no idea then that the greatest threat was already lurking inside. That fateful day was just an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of a quarterly budget meeting. While glaring at the numbers projected on a massive screen, I was exchanging points with each department head. My focus was entirely on work. So, when the phone in my pocket vibrated once softly, I didn't notice right away. When the meeting broke for a short recess and I casually picked up my phone, an unfamiliar notification icon caught my eye. It was from the CentraShield app. Intrusion detected at the front door. At first, I thought it must have been some kind of mistake, but then my heartbeat began to pound with a dreadful rhythm. When I opened the notification details, it clearly said unlocked with a duplicate key. The only people who had a spare key were my husband and his parents. And my husband was supposed to be overseas on a business trip. It was unthinkable that my in-laws would visit on a weekday afternoon without any notice. If that's the case. With trembling fingers, I tapped the Live View button on the CentraShield app. After a few seconds of loading, the camera feed from inside the front door appeared clearly on my screen. Standing there were, as I had feared, Brielle and her husband Corin. They must have gotten the key from my in-laws. "What are you doing?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. They casually took off their shoes as if it were their own home and stepped into the living room. Brielle dropped herself heavily onto my cherished designer sofa while Corin looked around the room, his eyes scanning as though appraising the value of everything inside. Then it happened. From the footage came a faint but steady electronic beeping sound. Beep beep beep. The entry delay warning. If the correct disarm code wasn't entered within 30 seconds of the door opening, the alarm would trigger. Of course they didn't know that. "What's that sound?" Brielle's confused voice came through my phone's speaker. No idea, but your brother didn't mention anything, so it's fine, right? Corin's carefree tone made my jaw tighten. I held my breath and stared at the screen. The 30-second countdown was about to begin. Beep beep beep. On the phone screen, the relentless countdown continued. Corin spotted the security panel on the wall and started pressing random buttons. Naturally, nothing happened. Brielle, looking uneasy, stood up and began pacing the living room. Hey, are you sure this sound is okay? And at that exact moment, a deafening alarm, over 100 decibels, exploded from the speakers of my phone, shaking the silence of my castle. On screen, Brielle and Corin literally jumped, clutching their ears and crouching down in panic. The sight was almost comical, but my anger had already surpassed laughter, quietly reaching its boiling point. Moments later, beneath the blaring alarm, a synthetic voice echoed from the security panel. This is the monitoring center. Please respond. This is the monitoring center. Please respond. It was the type of system that allowed the staff to speak directly to whoever was inside the house. Corin cautiously stepped closer to the panel and pressed the call button. Yes. This is the CentraShield Monitoring Center. An alarm has been triggered. For safety verification, please state the name of the contract holder and the preset security phrase. The calm voice of the operator echoed throughout the entire house. On the screen, Corin froze completely. This is my brother's house. The security phrase. If the security phrase cannot be confirmed, we will contact the police in accordance with the contract. I repeat, please provide the security phrase. The mechanical voice repeated its demand, cold and unwavering. Corin stammered helplessly while Brielle only shook her head in silence. Watching their pitiful, utterly unprepared break-in unfold, I was certain they had completely underestimated my house. And then, after several seconds of silence, a new notification appeared on my phone. Security phrase mismatch confirmed. The local police department has been notified. Officers are on their way to the scene. Police. The moment I saw that word, my mind went blank. Beyond anger, beyond shock. What was happening inside my house? What were they trying to do? I burst out of the conference room and stood alone in the empty hallway, eyes locked on my phone screen. Work, the meeting. None of it mattered anymore because at that very moment, my castle was being violated by uninvited guests. The police were on their way. That fact alone made my chest tighten with a mix of fury and fear. Almost without realizing it, I swiped the screen to switch the feed to the exterior camera by the front door. The sight that appeared left me speechless. On the road in front of my house sat a small moving truck I had never seen before. The tailgate was wide open. Inside the bed was loaded with household belongings, items clearly meant to be moved somewhere. A sofa, a mattress, a disassembled dining table, countless cardboard boxes. It was obvious that these were not belongings of temporary visitors. They were the cargo of people preparing to start a new life here. Things for moving in, plain and simple. At that moment, everything connected. Corin was a self-styled influencer with no real job, always short on money. Brielle, instead of losing patience with him, had joined him in repeatedly begging my husband and in-laws for money. And for the past few months, I had even been paying the rent for the apartment they were living in. Don't tell me they couldn't pay the rent anymore. So that's why they came to my house without any discussion, without permission, as if they were just moving into some vacant vacation home. I felt the rage surge all the way to the top of my head. This wasn't mere family dependence or carelessness. This was a calculated home invasion. That moment my phone vibrated. The number displayed was from the local police department. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to sound calm, and answered. Hello, this is Marielle. This is Officer Darius Reed from the Brookdale Police Department. After the alarm at your residence notified us, we found Miss Brielle and Mr. Corin inside your home, and we are currently speaking with them. They claim to be your relatives and say they have your permission to start living there from today. Is that true? The young officer's voice was businesslike, yet slightly uncertain. I bit my trembling lips, gathered every shred of composure I had left, and replied clearly, word for word, without a trace of hesitation. No, that is not true. I had no knowledge they were coming to my house today, and I have certainly never given them permission to live there. They entered my home without consent using a spare key. They are trespassers. I heard the officer gasp softly on the other end. That calm, unwavering declaration. It was the sound of the first bell in a long battle that had just begun. After telling the police they are trespassers, my trembling finger tapped the next number on my screen. My husband's overseas phone number. He was supposed to be on a business trip in Lisbon. After several rings, he finally answered. His tone weary and indifferent. Hello. What is it, Marielle? I'm with a client right now. This isn't the time for that. Something terrible has happened. I cut him off and hurriedly explained everything. That Brielle and Corin had entered our home without permission, that the alarm had gone off and the police were on the scene, that they were trying to move into our house as if it were theirs. I truly believed he would be angry, shocked, and ready to condemn his sister's reckless actions alongside me. No, perhaps I just wanted to believe that. But what came back through the line shattered that fragile hope. His voice was unbearably relaxed, almost lazy. Oh, that is it. Really something worth making such a fuss about. What? For a moment, I couldn't even understand what he meant. Yeah, Brielle told me all about it. Apparently, Corin messed up at work again and got fired. They're getting evicted from their apartment, so she asked if they could stay at our place for a while. I said, sure, why not? You said what? I could almost hear the sound of something snapping inside my head. I didn't hear anything about that. Not from you, not from Brielle. Not a single word. I was going to tell you honestly, but you've been so tense with work lately. I thought I'd wait until things calmed down. Besides, what's the big deal? They're family. We've got a spare room, don't we? Just help them out. Help them out. Those words, so light, so careless, hit me like a slap in the face, as if I were the cold-hearted, selfish one here. To him, this house wasn't our home. It was like an extension of his parents' place, a guest house for his family to come and go as they pleased. Are you even listening to yourself? What they have done is trespassing. I've already reported it to the police. What? You called the police, Marielle? Are you crazy? Stop that right now. You're blowing this way out of proportion. And in that instant I finally understood. This man wasn't on my side. He wasn't my husband anymore. He was just Brielle's protective big brother. As his angry voice ranted on from the other end, I quietly pulled the phone away from my ear and pressed the end call button. That was the beginning of the end of our marriage. Even after hanging up, my hands were still trembling with anger. If anyone could understand, surely it would be his parents. Damon and Brielle's parents. Surely they would condemn their children's outrageous behavior. Believing that, I dialed my mother-in-law's number. After a few rings, she answered in a calm tone. No, not calm. It was the unervingly composed voice of someone who already knew everything. Oh my, Marielle, what's the matter? You sound so flustered. Something terrible has happened. Brielle and Corin, they're in my house. Just like I had done with my husband, I desperately explained everything that had happened. But her reaction shattered my sense of reason even more than Damon's had. Oh, I know, dear. Those poor kids were really in trouble. Corin lost his job, and they couldn't pay their rent. So I told them, why don't you stay with Marielle for a while? Her new house has plenty of room. You told them what? The moment she said that, I felt dizzy. So she was the source of all this. Why didn't you tell me or talk to me about this first? I somehow managed to ask, my voice barely steady. She answered with a curious, almost innocent tone. Oh, why? Or family. No need to be so formal. You have such a big, lovely house. Letting them stay a little while won't hurt, will it? They always say you should help your own. It's a family's duty to support one another. Support one another. I had never heard that beautiful phrase sound so ugly. To them, my hard work, my property, and my privacy could all be nullified with a single word. Family. I was no longer merely angry. I was wrapped in despair. There was no way we could ever understand one another. We lived in entirely different worlds. What they're doing isn't relying on kindness. It's a crime. I have reported them to the police as trespassers. What? How could you do that? Do you want to give them a criminal record? My mother-in-law's shrill voice rose on the other end of the line, but her screaming no longer reached me. They really understood nothing. They had no sense of how abnormal their actions were. After I ended the call, I stood frozen for a long moment. My husband and my in-laws, they were all united, attacking my castle. The weight of that fact pressed down on me. Then my phone lit up again. The displayed caller was Betrayal. Perhaps the questioning at the police station had finished. I took a deep breath and pressed the answer button. Maybe, just maybe, she would realize her mistake and apologize. It was a foolish hope, but one that still lingered somewhere in my heart. However, what came through the line was not an apology but a hysterical shriek instead. Marielle, what are you thinking? What do you mean, what am I thinking? Don't play dumb. Because of you, the police treated us like thieves, and now the whole neighborhood's laughing at us. This is the worst. I can't believe it. She spoke as if she were the victim. I was too stunned to reply. It wasn't me who called the police. It was the Central Shield system. And it was you who used a spare key to enter my home, wasn't it? If I have a spare key, that means I can come in. I got permission from Damon and Mom. So why didn't you tell us about that alarm? You set a trap for us on purpose. A trap? When that word came from her mouth, blood rushed to my head, and a fierce rage surged through me. To them, my kindness and my property were nothing more than tools, things to be used for their own selfish gain. And then she said something truly unbelievable. Anyway, thanks to you, Corin's so shocked he's bedridden, and I'm emotionally devastated. How are you going to make up for this humiliation? You better pay me compensation. Let's see, $12,000 should do it. Compensation. The moment that word left her mouth, something inside me shattered completely. My sense of decency, my moral compass. None of it meant anything to these invaders. Calmly but clearly I told her, "All right, Betrayal. There's nothing more for us to discuss. From now on, you'll speak with my lawyer." What? Your lawyer? What is this? Some kind of threat? I ended the call before she could finish her sentence. Then I powered off my phone. In the brief silence that followed, I made a firm decision. No more mercy. No more leniency. I dialed my friend Lisa, my attorney. She's not only my closest friend but also a highly skilled lawyer who specializes in corporate disputes. When she answered, I calmly laid out the facts, keeping my emotions out of it. After listening to everything, she said, "Marielle, I'm impressed you endured this for so long. This isn't a simple family dispute. This is residential trespassing and a violation of property rights. And that demand for compensation, it could even qualify as attempted extortion." Her steady, law-grounded words cleared the chaos in my mind. What should I do, Lisa? I don't want to deal with them anymore. Yes, I know. That's exactly why you must not fight them with emotion but with the law. You have to build a wall they can never cross again. Now listen carefully. Leave work early this afternoon and go straight to the police station. Lisa's instructions were precise, calm, and completely confident. Take the notes you made from the phone conversations and file an official report. Request the intrusion footage from Central Shield and attach it as evidence. Tell the police clearly. It was a family member's crime, but they show no remorse, and you fear for your safety. Fear for my safety. Those words made me hesitate for a moment. But they haven't actually hurt me physically. No, but this is about protecting your mental safety and your property, your life itself. Don't hesitate. This is your self-defense. You need to show them legally just how serious you are. Her firm words strengthened my resolve. That's right. I didn't need to be the kind Marielle anymore. I was done being the one who swallowed her anger in silence. I told my supervisor I had an urgent personal matter, left work early, and went straight to the local police station. The officer who met me was a kind-looking man, perhaps in his late 50s. When I explained everything and played the recording of Brielle's voice demanding money, her tone bordering on blackmail, his expression hardened visibly. "This is awful. Miss, you did the right thing coming here. We'll file your report officially. I'll make sure they receive a strict warning not to approach your property again." By the time I stepped out of the station, an unexpected calm had settled over me. The signal fire had been lit. This was only the beginning, the start of a long battle to reclaim my castle in the truest sense. On my way home, I discovered my phone filled with missed calls and furious messages from Damon. "What are you thinking? Withdraw the police report right now. Are you trying to turn your family into criminals?" Not one of his words showed concern for me. Every single message was about his sister, his parents, their reputation. Never my safety, never my dignity. When I finally got home, I called Lissa again to report everything that had happened at the station. She praised my actions and then spoke in a quiet, steady tone. "Marielle, are you ready for what comes next? Yes. Your husband is no longer your partner. He's his family's accomplice. Can you really walk through life with someone like that?" Her words pierced straight into the deepest part of my heart. She was right. I already knew the truth. This marriage was beyond repair. In fact, months ago, long before this chaos began, a divorce form had been quietly waiting in the back of my desk drawer. I'd kept it ever since the day Damon decided, without consulting me, to cover one of Brielle's debts. At that time, I had quietly taken a single divorce form and kept it like a talisman in the back of my study drawer. It was meant to be my last resort, my silent safeguard for the day I could no longer endure. I never imagined that day would come so soon. It was meant to be my last resort, the final card to play when I truly reached my limit. I never imagined I would have to use it in this way. I took out the divorce papers and, with steady, decisive handwriting, filled in my name and every required detail. Not a single tear fell. That night, Damon cut his business trip short and returned home in a fury, and I waited for him quietly in the living room. The moment he walked in, he glared at me like a demon. "Marielle, what have you done?" Brielle called me crying. She said the police issued a restraining warning. Yes, I think she got what she deserved. My icy calm voice left him momentarily speechless. "Are you serious? She's family. Turning her over to the police for a small mistake is insane. Which of us is being irrational? Moving furniture into someone else's home without permission and trying to live there? Turning a blind eye to that? Demanding compensation while ignoring your own wrongdoing?" I laid out each fact one by one. He had no answer. His lips trembled. Then I slid the divorce papers across the table and placed them in front of him. "Our marriage is over. Your idea of family and my idea of decency will never be reconciled. I choose my safety and my dignity." He looked from the documents to my face in disbelief over and over again. Finally, in a hoarse voice, he said, "You'll regret this. I think you will." Those were the last words we exchanged. He packed his belongings that night and never crossed my house's threshold again. After the man who had been my husband left with a large suitcase in tow, I was left alone in the wide living room. I thought I might cry, but instead my heart felt oddly still. Rather than sorrow, I felt a thrill of readiness for the real battle that was about to begin. The next morning, the first thing I did was call a locksmith. A few hours later, the technician arrived and one by one replaced every cylinder in the house with new ones. Now, no one could open the gates of my castle without my permission. Next, I contacted Shield. "I'd like to upgrade my security plan to the highest level. Also, please remove my husband and in-laws from the emergency contact list. Instead, register my attorney, Lissa, as the primary contact." The representative seemed momentarily surprised by my firm tone, but quickly proceeded with the changes. On the app, their names vanished cleanly from the list of registered spare key users. My castle's defense system became flawless. And for the final step, I opened the contact list on my phone. Damon, Brielle, their parents. One by one I pressed and held each name. Block then delete. I blocked all their social media accounts as well. There was no longer any way for them to reach me, not in the physical nor in the digital world. Staring at the simplified, clean contact list, I finally exhaled deeply. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel lonely. But more than that, an overwhelming sense of liberation filled my entire being. This was right. No, this was better. The second chapter of my life then began in my quiet, safe castle. Months passed after the divorce was finalized, and I became truly alone. My life was astonishingly peaceful. No more alarms blaring, no more unreasonable phone calls or demands. The weekends I spent on the inner terrace, reading in complete solitude, became moments of priceless tranquility. Of course, it wasn't as if I heard nothing of those invaders' lives afterward. Occasionally, a relative of my ex-husband, someone who still checked in on me, would tell me how they were doing. According to her, after the scandal, Damon was called back from his overseas assignment and branded within the company as the man who couldn't manage his own family. He was removed from key projects, endured uncomfortable days, and eventually chose to resign. With his pride intact but his independence gone, he moved back in with his elderly parents. Brielle and Corin, having lost their apartment, followed suit, moving into the same house. 5 adults living under one roof with pensioner parents. A once grand family became trapped in a cramped space of their own making. Corin is still unemployed, chasing vague business dreams that never materialized. Brielle, unable to let go of her taste for luxury, kept quitting every part-time job she found, and their living expenses were slowly draining the retirement savings of Damon's aging parents. I could think of only one phrase: poetic justice. And yet, my own heart was not entirely unscathed. That harrowing experience left behind a deep scar, a lingering mistrust of people. No matter how close someone becomes, a part of me would always keep a quiet distance. What if this person betrays me someday too? That constant suspicion seeped into my heart like a slow-acting poison. I knew I couldn't go on like this. I had to heal myself, rebuild what had been broken with my own hands. So, on Lissa's recommendation, I decided to meet with a highly regarded therapist. It was the beginning of a new kind of battle, a journey to rebuild the true walls of my inner fortress. Those therapy sessions became a precious time for me to re-examine the blueprint of my own heart. Dr. Selena Rowan, my therapist, asked me gently, "Marielle, why do you think you gave them the spare keys?" Her question struck me deeply. Without realizing it, I had granted them unconditional access to my personal space simply because they were family. I had achieved financial independence, yes, but emotionally, I was still trapped under the spell of that word. Family. True strength, Dr. Selena taught me, isn't about helping others. True strength is having the courage to draw healthy boundaries in order to protect yourself. With each session, the ice of mistrust inside me began to melt away, little by little. Recently, I received a letter from my former mother-in-law. It didn't contain remorse or apology, only selfish hope. She wrote, "We're waiting for the day you change your heart and return to the family." After reading it, I quietly fed the letter into the shredder. And as the sound of tearing paper faded, I made a solemn vow. No matter what happens, I will protect this quiet, safe life that I fought for with my own hands.
Throw her things out, Janessa. She doesn't belong here anymore. You're finished. You lost your job, and now you're useless to this family.
Here! Take your junk and get off our property! Get off our property! Leech!
Ungrateful!
Useless! Don't ever come back!
Told my family I was fired from a high-paying job and I'm moving in with them because I can't pay the rent, but it was a way to expose their true attitude to me. They said, "We don't need you here without your money." Well, let's go. My name is Maribel Rowan, and I'm what most people would call successful at 26. I work as an investment manager at one of the top firms in the city. I have a decent apartment, rented but still, a good job and enough savings to finally buy my own place soon. No mortgage, no loans, just the way I want it. Everything was going according to plan until that phone call from Aunt Lynette changed everything. "Maribel, honey, are you coming for Thanksgiving this year?" Her warm voice brought a smile to my face. Aunt Lynette had been more of a mother to me than my actual mother ever was. "Of course I wouldn't miss it," I replied, already looking forward to her famous apple pie. What I didn't expect was who else would be there. I should probably explain why my aunt's call meant so much to me. You see, I haven't spoken to my parents or my older sister Janessa in 8 years. Not since the day I graduated high school. I had just received my acceptance letter to college with a partial scholarship for investment management. I was over the moon. It was everything I'd worked for. I rushed home to tell my parents, expecting them to be proud. Instead, I got the conversation that would tear our family apart. "We can't pay for your college, Maribel," Mom said, not even looking up from her magazine. "Your sister's getting married soon, and we need all our savings for her wedding." "But what about Grandma's money?" I remember my voice shaking. "She left it specifically for my education. You promised her." Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Things change, honey. Janessa's wedding is more important right now. You'll figure something out." That's when everything I'd been holding back for years came pouring out. More important, just like everything else about Janessa has always been more important. The argument that followed was ugly. Years of feeling second best exploded into accusations and tears. I packed my bags that night and went to the only person who had ever treated me fairly, Aunt Lynette. She took me in without hesitation. What I didn't know then was that she had been saving money for her own son's education, but he had died in a car accident a few years before. She offered that money to me, $47,500, and I only accepted on the condition that I would pay her back every penny once I graduated and got a job. Those college years were tough. I worked part-time at a cafe while maintaining my grades and scholarship. But I made it through, landed a job at a prestigious investment firm, and 2 years later, I paid back every cent to Aunt Lynette. Life was good. I had my independence, my career was thriving, and I had carefully avoided any contact with my family, until that Thanksgiving invitation. I almost dropped the pumpkin pie I was carrying when I walked into Aunt Lynette's house that Thanksgiving. There they were. My parents, my sister Janessa, and her 2 kids, ages 6 and 3, all sitting in the living room like they belonged there. 8 years of carefully avoiding them, gone in an instant. "Maribel." Lynette rushed to help me with the pie, her eyes apologetic. I didn't know they were coming. They just showed up. I stood frozen in the doorway, my heart pounding. Mom looked older with more gray in her hair than I remembered. Dad had gained weight. Janessa, well, she still looked like the golden child even with 2 kids hanging off her arms. "I need some air," I managed to say, turning around and heading straight for the back porch. The November air was cold, but I barely felt it. My hands were shaking as I gripped the railing. "Maribel." Mom's voice behind me made me stiffen. "Can we talk? 8 years of silence and now you want to talk?" I didn't turn around. "Why are you even here?" I heard her footsteps on the wooden boards as she came to stand beside me. "Because we were wrong. Your father and I. We've spent years feeling guilty about what we did. We want to make things right." "Then why didn't you call? Write? Email? Anything?" The words came out sharper than I intended. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Because we were ashamed. So ashamed. We kept telling ourselves we'd reach out, but the more time passed, the harder it became. When we heard you'd be here for Thanksgiving, we knew it might be our only chance to see you face to face. To tell you how sorry we are for everything." I stood there, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to list every single time they'd made me feel less important than Janessa. Another part noticed how tired she looked, how her hands trembled as she spoke. "I need time to think," I finally said. It's a lot." "Of course." She nodded quickly. "Take all the time you need. We'll be here when you're ready." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I sat quietly in a corner of Aunt Lynette's living room, pushing turkey around my plate and avoiding eye contact. True to their word, my parents and Janessa didn't push. They chatted with other relatives, played with the kids, helped with dishes, all while shooting occasional guilty glances my way. I watched them when they weren't looking. Mom helping in the kitchen, Dad entertaining Janessa's kids, Janessa herself looking somehow both confident and uncertain. They were trying to give me space, but their presence filled every corner of the house. For 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, I couldn't think about anything else. Every morning I'd wake up and replay that conversation with Mom on the porch. Every night, I'd lie awake wondering if I was making the right decision by even considering forgiveness. I sat in my apartment one evening, staring at my phone. Mom's number was still saved there. I'd never deleted it, though I couldn't explain why. Maybe some part of me had always known this day would come. My finger hovered over the call button for what felt like hours. Finally, I took a deep breath and pressed it. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3. Maribel. Mom's voice was cautious, hopeful. Hi, Mom. My voice cracked a little. I've been thinking about what you said at Thanksgiving. I think I'd like to try, slowly. The words felt strange coming out of my mouth. Maybe we could start over. That's how I found myself standing outside my childhood home a week later, clutching a bag of carefully chosen gifts. Not expensive, just thoughtful. A scarf for Mom. A book Dad had mentioned wanting years ago. Some educational toys for Janessa's kids. The house looked smaller than I remembered, and definitely more worn. The paint was peeling in places, and the garden Mom used to tend so meticulously was overgrown. Before I could ring the doorbell, the door flew open. Mom stood there, looking nervous but happy. You came. I came, I nodded, stepping inside. The interior was just as telling as the exterior. The furniture was the same from 8 years ago but now showing obvious wear. The walls needed a fresh coat of paint, and the carpet was threadbare in places. Dad emerged from the kitchen looking uncertain. Janessa was there too, her kids hiding behind her legs. I handed out the gifts, watching their faces as they opened them. Mom's eyes welled up when she saw the scarf, and Dad actually smiled at the book. Over dinner, Mom had made my favorite lasagna from childhood. The truth about their lives emerged. Janessa's marriage had ended badly 2 years ago, forcing her to move back home with the kids. Mom's health problems had reduced her to part-time work at the library. And Dad had been forced to take a lower-paying position after his company downsized. How about you, Maribel? Janessa asked carefully, pushing her food around her plate. How's work? Good, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. I'm at Thornbridge and Company. Investments now. It's a large firm downtown. The rest of the evening continued like that. Careful conversations, avoided topics, and underlying tension nobody wanted to acknowledge. We were all trying so hard to be normal that it felt anything but. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Janessa started showing up at my office during lunch breaks, usually with 2 cups of coffee from the shop downstairs. We'd sit in the building's courtyard, catching up on 8 years of missed conversations. She told me about her failed marriage, how her ex-husband turned out to be terrible with money and even worse with commitment. As Christmas approached, I found myself actually looking forward to family celebrations. But first I had an important stop to make. A coffee maker. Aunt Lynette laughed as she unwrapped her gift. Are you trying to tell me something about my instant coffee? Maybe, I grinned, hugging her tight. Thank you for everything, Aunt Lynette. For being there when I needed you most. She held me at arm's length, studying my face. Are you happy, sweetie? With how things are going with your family? I think I am, I answered, surprising myself with how true it felt. It's different now. Better. Christmas at my parents' house was nothing like the tense dinner from my first visit. Mom had decorated every inch of the place, and Dad was actually singing carols as he helped in the kitchen. Janessa's kids, Ilara and Finn, had finally warmed up to me, especially after seeing their presents. A beginner chemistry kit for Ilara and a toy prehistoric animal set for Finn. Aunt Maribel, they squealed, climbing all over me. Can you help us build the volcano? Watching them play with their new toys, I realized how much I'd missed having a family. Even Mom and Dad seemed more relaxed, laughing and joking like they used to when I was little. Months passed, and we fell into a comfortable rhythm. Sunday dinners became a regular thing. Janessa and I had our coffee dates. Then came the spring break trip. I hadn't planned it, really. I just overheard Mom saying how the kids had never seen the ocean. Let's go, I said impulsively. Next week. I'll book everything. That trip was magical. Watching Alara and Finn's faces when they first saw the ocean. Hearing their squeals as they jumped over waves. Building sandcastles with Dad like I used to as a kid. It was worth every penny. After the trip, things felt even more natural. Which is why I wasn't entirely surprised when Mom and Dad asked to talk to me one evening after dinner. The plumbing in the house. Dad started, looking uncomfortable. It's pretty bad. We've been putting off repairs, but... We hate to ask, Mom jumped in. But we could really use some help. I wrote them a check right there. It wasn't a small amount, $4,600, but seeing their relief made it worth it. After that, there were other requests. Nothing unreasonable. A new water heater when the old one died. Help with Ilara and Finn's school supplies. Small things that families help each other with. It was during a regular Sunday dinner when Mom dropped the bomb. She'd been quieter than usual throughout the meal, pushing her food around her plate instead of eating. Finally, as Dad was serving dessert, she spoke up. I lost my job, she said, her voice cracking. They're cutting positions at the library, and mine's one of them. I don't know what we're going to do. The medical bills, the house payments. I watched my mother's hands trembling as she held her coffee cup. Saw the worry lines deepening on Dad's face. They looked old suddenly. Vulnerable. Before I knew what I was saying, the words were out of my mouth. I can help, I heard myself say. I can afford $1,300 a month. It's not a problem. The relief on their faces was immediate and overwhelming. Mom started crying again, but this time from happiness. Dad got up and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. And so began our new normal. Every month, like clockwork, I transferred the money to their account. They never asked for more than we'd agreed upon, though occasionally they'd mention needing something specific. New winter boots for Finn or a replacement for their ancient microwave. Janessa and I grew even closer during this time. When I had to travel for work, I started bringing her along whenever I could. Nothing too extravagant. A weekend in Brighton Cove, 3 days in Marston Bay, a quick trip to Solara Springs. Just sisters making up for lost time. Life fell into a comfortable pattern. Sunday dinners, monthly transfers, occasional shopping trips with Mom, helping Janessa's kids with their homework. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like family should feel. Then came the call that would change everything. Maribel. Mrs. Delaney, my landlady, sounded apologetic. I need to talk to you about the apartment. My grandson is graduating from college in a few months. He'll be working in the city and, well, I promised him the apartment. Oh, I said, looking around at the space I'd called home for so long. The wall I'd painted a pale lavender on a whim, the window seat where I loved to read on rainy days. I'm so sorry, she said. You've been a wonderful tenant. I'll give you plenty of time to find something else, of course. After hanging up, I sat in my favorite spot by the window, thinking. I'd been saving diligently all these years. Even with helping my family, my investment portfolio was doing well. Maybe this wasn't a setback at all. Maybe it was the universe giving me a push. I spent the next few weeks meeting with Selby, my realtor, viewing apartments during my lunch breaks and after work. I had a clear vision of what I wanted, something modern close to the office with enough space for a home office. I was particularly excited about a corner unit in a new building just 3 blocks from work. I could already picture myself there, drinking coffee on the balcony, hosting dinner parties in the open-concept kitchen. But I kept it all to myself, wanting to surprise my family with the news once everything was finalized. Sorry, Mom, I can't make it to Sunday this week, I said during our weekly call. We've got some problems at work. I was going through paint samples one evening when Aunt Lynette called. Her voice was tight, controlled. Maribel, can you come over? We need to talk. It's important. I found her pacing in her kitchen, looking more agitated than I'd ever seen her. She barely waited for me to sit down before speaking. I heard something today, she began, her hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee. Something you need to know. From Loretta and Jean. They're in my book club. Old family friends who'd known us since I was a kid. Aunt Lynette continued, each word seeming to pain her. They were talking about running into your parents and Janessa at the grocery store last week. Apparently, after you started helping them financially, your family's been talking about you to a lot of people. What do you mean, talking? But something cold was already settling in my chest. They've been calling you their personal ATM, behind your back, she said bluntly. Making jokes about how they finally found a use for your fancy job. Janessa's been telling people she just has to mention wanting to go somewhere, and you'll pay for the whole trip. The room seemed to tilt sideways. That can't be right. There's more. Lynette's voice was gentle now. Your mother's been bragging about how she doesn't really need to find another job because Maribel's good for the money. They've been laughing about it, sweetheart. Laughing about how eager you are to help them. I sat there feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Part of me wanted to deny it, to defend them. But I knew Aunt Lynette would never make this up. And suddenly little things started clicking into place. The way they changed the subject whenever my job came up, how the requests for help had become more frequent, the calculating looks I sometimes caught them exchanging. I'm so sorry, Lynette whispered, reaching for my hand. I debated whether to tell you, but you deserve to know. I sat there for a long time, thinking about the past year. All those family dinners, the trips with Janessa, the monthly transfers, the grateful tears in Mom's eyes when I helped with bills. Had it all been an act? Then slowly, an idea started forming. 2 days later, I stood outside my parents' house with 2 packed suitcases. Having spent the morning moving all my furniture to Aunt Lynette's garage. I'd rehearsed this plan in my mind, every detail carefully prepared. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell. Mom opened the door, surprise written all over her face. Maribel, what are you doing here? What's with the suitcases? Dad and Janessa appeared behind her, equally confused. Perfect. I let my lower lip tremble, blinking rapidly as if holding back tears. I got fired, I choked out. There were budget cuts and they found some mistakes in my work. They're making me pay back bonuses. I can't afford my apartment anymore. I swallowed hard. I was hoping maybe I could stay here just for a few months, until I get back on my feet. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then Mom's concerned expression twisted into something ugly. Does this mean you won't be sending us the monthly money anymore? She demanded, all pretense of sympathy gone. My heart cracked a little, even though I'd expected this. No, Mum. I won't have any extra money for a while. Janessa stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. What about our trip to Uranta next month? The one you promised to take me on. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to stay in character. I simply shook my head, looking at the floor. That's when all hell broke loose. You stupid, irresponsible girl. Mom screeched, making me flinch. How could you let this happen? What kind of investment manager gets fired? We should have known you'd screw this up, just like you screw up everything else. Dad joined in, his face red with rage. You can't stay here, Maribel. We don't need dead weight. You should have been more careful. Honestly, this is embarrassing. Janessa stormed forward, grabbed my suitcases, and dragged them to the porch. There's no room for you here, she spat. I'm not sharing my space with a failure. I watched in stunned silence as my sister dumped my luggage outside like garbage. These were the same people who hugged me at Christmas, who cried grateful tears when I helped them, who said they wanted to fix things, who pretended to love me. We don't need you without your money, Mom sneered. You'll never get another decent job after being fired like this. Don't come crawling back to us for support. I stood there taking it all in. The masks had finally fallen, revealing the ugly truth beneath. Every Sunday dinner, every smile, every family trip. It had all been a calculated performance. Aunt Lynette had been right. Looking at them now, the twisted expression on Mom's face, Dad's red fury, Janessa's contempt, I felt something unexpected. Something inside me that had been hanging by a thread finally snapped clean. Without a word, I turned, walked to my suitcases and picked them up. Behind me, their voices rose in a chorus of insults. Leech. Ungrateful. Useless. Don't come back. I wheeled my suitcases down the driveway in silence, their shouts following me like angry wasps. Neighbors peeked through curtains, but I couldn't bring myself to care. 20 minutes later, I was back at Aunt Lynette's house. She took one look at my face and immediately opened her arms. I fell into them, finally letting the tears come. They showed their true colors, didn't they? She whispered, stroking my hair. I managed a weak smile, then pulled out my phone. First, I opened my banking app and canceled the monthly transfer to Mom's account. Then I pulled up the travel website where I'd booked Janessa's dream European vacation. 2 clicks. And both the hotel reservation and flight tickets, worth $6,350, vanished. Cancelled. The 2 weeks I spent at Aunt Lynette's felt like a cocoon. A safe place to process everything that had happened. During that time, my realtor called with exciting news. Remember that corner unit you loved? Selby said. The sellers accepted your offer. Everything moved quickly after that. Paperwork, inspections, the final walkthrough. It was a blur of signatures and meetings. Before I knew it, I was standing in my very own apartment, holding the keys in my trembling hands. Aunt Lynette helped me move everything in from her garage. We spent a weekend arranging furniture, hanging artwork, and making the space truly mine. She even insisted on helping pick out new curtains for the floor-to-ceiling windows. That evening after she left, I did something impulsive. I took a photo of myself in my new living room, the city lights twinkling behind me through the massive windows. I posted it on social media with the caption, "Dreams do come true. Homeowner at last. No mortgage. No loans. Just years of hard work paying off." I knew what I was doing. I knew they would see it. Sure enough, my phone rang 2 hours later. Mom's number flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. "What is this photo about?" she demanded. "What apartment? I thought you were fired." I settled into my new armchair, feeling surprisingly calm. "Actually, Mom, I wasn't fired. I'm still employed. Still successful. And now I'm a homeowner too." You lied to us," she sputtered. "Yes," I said simply. "I needed to test something." "Test what?" Her voice rose an octave. I could hear Dad and Janessa in the background. "To see if you actually cared about me or just my money. I guess I got my answer when you threw my suitcases out and called me a leech." There was a moment of stunned silence. Then chaos erupted on the other end. Dad cursing. Janessa shrieking something about deception. Mom's voice turning sugar-sweet. "Sweetheart, we were just shocked. Worried about you. Course we care. We can move past this little joke of yours. Everything can go back to normal." I laughed out loud. "Normal? You mean where I pay for everything while you mock me behind my back? No thanks." Pause. "Oh, and Janessa, about your trip. I canceled your tickets. I think I'll go by myself instead." "You wouldn't." "Goodbye." I hung up and immediately blocked their numbers. Then I blocked them on all social media. It felt like setting down a heavy weight I'd been carrying for years. They tried calling from different numbers. They sent emails. They even showed up at my office building a few days later, but I had already warned security. Watching them get turned away should have hurt. Didn't. All I felt was relief. That weekend, Aunt Lynette came over for dinner in my new home. I cooked her favorite lasagna, and we sat on the balcony watching the sunset. "Are you okay?" she asked, refilling our wine glasses. "I have everything I need right here," I said, raising my glass. "A home of my own, a job I love, and the only family member who ever truly mattered. Lynette clinked her glass against mine, smiling softly. Sometimes I realized the family you choose is better than the family you're born into. And sometimes, the hardest lessons lead to the most beautiful beginnings.